all of those in, create more webinars and put them all in for everyone. Housekeeping, everyone. It's 2:02. I just give you a couple more minutes since we're figuring out that there might have been a little bit of overlap with multiple meeting invites here. My co-lead for the PMCG has been out, and unfortunately we don't have access to that system since it's through that institution. So we're making the switch over to another institution here. So bear with us, but I think this should be the last one that we have that issue with.
That's good. How many? We have 19 people. Ah, hello, Jack. Hi, Kit.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Familiar faces. Nice to see.
All right, Ed and Carol, you ready to get going?
Yeah, but Ed,
Absolutely.
are you going to drive or am I going to drive? I'm sorry, we didn't talk about that.
If you wouldn't mind driving, I've got the. Actually, I don't know what I was going to say to finish that sentence, and now I threw that out there on the recording. So yeah, can you drive? Or
Yes, I can. I'll drive, and then Jen, you've got yours. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I will hand it over to you in a little bit here and let you get started. You should have the ability to share. All right. March 21st already. Yeehaw. Flying by. So a few housekeeping rules. We always ask you to mute yourself unless you're asking a question or have been raising your hand, and we ask you to unmute. But we always have some noise in the background. I did see that my friend Christina has her little one with her too, and we know that they love to make all sorts of fun smiley faces and highs. So just mute yourself. If you need closed captioning, that should be available to you. You can turn that on. If you have your phone next to you, maybe turn that on silent so you don't have a lot of noise distracting you or anything, because this is a lessons learned session. It's going to be amazing. And always feel free to ask us questions, use the chat, raise your hand. You know, we have several of our members here who will keep an eye on that to make sure that you're allowed to engage and ask questions. We love the collaboration and interaction with our folks. This session is being recorded, so we will be sharing the results afterward. We'll be posting that to Educause Connect afterward, and most folks will see the email when it goes out that says that that's available for you. So you can pass it along and share it with any of your colleagues or revisit it at a later time if you're interested. Today's session is, as always, being hosted by your PMCG co-chairs, myself and my steering committee, two of which are doing the presentation today. Where our agenda is actually very brief and very focused, but today is actually our inaugural introduction of what we're calling the Agile Moment. We just want to try and introduce some reoccurring Agile things with each of our monthly meetings. We know that there are constant conversations and questions and asks about what is this Agile thing, and there's no better way than to just have a quick brief, like, here's something in the Agile space to reference, and maybe it'll spark some interest in conversations with folks. If that is the case, absolutely reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to try and put something together and maybe even do some ad hoc sessions with you about Agile topics. We've got a few members who are very well versed in that space, and I'd love to re-engage with them and offer more sessions focused on Agile. We're going to do that today, and then we'll, of course, have our keynote for lessons learned. So Ed Puckett is going to give you the first Agile Moment.
This Agile Moment is brought to you by the number 207 and the letter A. So one of my professional goals is to get certified in Agile. So I thought, okay, cool, I'll do that, and I'll go out there and find an Agile certification and get certified. And as I dug into it, found out there were, according to Gartner, over 207 Agile certifications out there, ranging all over the place. So we'll hop to the next slide and we'll dive into a few of those. I am not, don't worry, this Agile Moment is not going to attempt to talk about all 207 of them, but here are what I'm going to say are the bigger ones, or the most popular ones. They're actually divided into two kinds of classifications. There's the team level certifications, And we'll talk about later this scale larger agile certification. So, and again, this is coming, resources are from Gartner, as well as talking to a few people around the Educause community group, just about which paths and directions to take. And this is just Ed's summary of it, because it is an agile moment. It's what I've kind of studied and I'm sharing out to the group. So of the team level certifications, there are, I'm going to say 3 big areas to go from. I know this table has 4 columns. I'll get to that 4th one in a moment. But you've got Scrum.org, Scrum Alliance, and Scrum Inc. They've all been spawned off, if you will. I'll use a gaming word, spawned off by the founders of Agile for different reasons. And they focus, again, on product management. And so you've got the Scrum Master tracks 1 through 3 for the Scrum.org and the product owner tracks 1 through 3. And you can see the Scrum Alliance is similar. As to which direction you go, it just depends on your preference in terms of how you want to train. I really don't see a big difference. I have been told, but I can't back it up, when I was talking to a particular analyst, that Scrum.org tends to be more broad. But again, I haven't actually compared. I haven't done both Scrum.org and Scrum Alliance to give you a full comparison. I will say Scrum.org is kind of neat. When you create your account, it is free. And then you can get a, once you do that, you get a, like a training path. And so there's these checklist of things that you can read, check off that you've done them, and work your way through the content. And then if you want to, you can commit to take a course. Obviously, that will have a fee. And then you take your test. And I'm also noting there in the columns that Scrum.org certification is lifelong, whereas the Scrum Alliance requires you to renew that every 2 years, based upon what I was looking up, or based upon what I was researching. Kanban University is specifically about getting certified in the Kanban methodology and managing your projects that way. And they have several levels of certifications. You've got the foundation, the advanced, the strategic, and the trainer certification. So that takes us through the team level certifications. I will pick up the pace and we'll move on to the next slide. My moment is now becoming longer than a moment. You got your Agile scale certifications here. PMI has recently acquired the Discipline Agile Scrum methodology for our practice from one of the Agile founders. And they've always had the more broad PMI ACP certification. So in speaking with a certification analyst, their thought is, and this is just their thought, they admitted they don't have data to back this up, that if you've got PMI and they've already had ACP and they've adopted this discipline method, how far are they going to carry along with both styles of certifications? So it's something to think about there. And then you got your large scale Scrum and your scaled Agile framework. And if you do the math real quick, you can see there are 15 different certifications starting at the foundational level, going all the way through the trainer coach certification. And additionally, a quick note down at the bottom shows there's these other certifications, which I didn't dig in too much, but because I don't see a lot of them, maybe people out in the community group are familiar with these certifications, but then there's the Nexus and the Scrum at Scale. So the takeaway here, though, is if you're thinking of Agile scale certification, it's worth looking into the different varieties of them, but then you've got to suss it down to what your path is. And so the thing to think about is, what are your personal professional goals? And then where does your organization taking Agile, if they've got it incorporated? And you just want to find the balance there, and then you let that be your path. I have it on the authority from 2 people I've talked to that a popular path is to go ahead and complete your Scrum Master certification, because a lot of that content is then applied to the Agile certification. So if you want to go Scrum and then get a more broader just Agile certification, that's a good path to take. So that is today's Agile moment. You can see it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be some content that you researched or have picked up and want to share with the community group. I don't know, are we going to stop here for questions on this Agile moment, Jen, or are we going to just move on to?
Yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes here if anybody has any questions. Or if anybody has had personal experiences with some of these, like Scrum at scale.
Mhm.
I know the one that I've heard the most often is the Scaled Agile framework. And I've heard that that is intensive and very expensive. Is that what you discovered too, Ed, or hadn't gotten into the
I did
monetary
not get
aspect
that.
yet?
I did not get that far. I started thinking about, all right, where do I really need to go and what does my organization's K-State, what are they going to use? And so I'm going to start off with the Scrum just to get the Scrum concepts down, maybe get the master level 1, and then move quickly over to the Agile certification, get that broader concept. I haven't figured out which Agile path I want to take or which certifying body I want to use. Leaning toward PMIACP, not quite sure yet.
Do we want to get a thumbs up from everybody if they want to hear what Ed chose at the end of the year? Oh, I got a couple people anyway. All right. Well, then we got you on the hook here, Ed. Eventually, you can
great.
come back to us and tell us, which one you ended up going for and why.
I love the fact that my professional development plan is now being recorded, will be on YouTube, as well as now I'm accountable to the entire community group. That's just so awesome. I can't tell you how that makes me feel.
All right. No questions. If you think of any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and hand the reins over to Carol and Ed. We can get into our lessons learned.
All right. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started here. There we go. Well, welcome to our top 10 lessons learned segment of the meeting. Back in January, Adam sent out a survey about what your lessons learned were from projects you've had experience. So Ed and I are here to go over them with you. Today, we are representing Arcanum University. Ed, do you want to explain what Arcanum University is?
Yes, absolutely. So we promised that because when you're collecting information about lessons learned, you might get some lessons that are personal or the big whoopsies. And so we didn't want to accidentally call out any universities. So we promised the community that these responses would be anonymous and not associated with any of our institutions. So if you're really interested, you can Google what Arcanum is, and that is the name of this fictitious university that all 10 of these lessons came from. So I took a little creative licensing and asked actually ChatGPT to give me some good names of fake universities. So there you go.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So let's start with what lessons learned are. Whether you are a PMP, an accidental project manager, or a department lead, the Project Management Institute gives us a definition. Lessons learned, this is a very long explanation, but basically lessons learned is the knowledge we gain in the projects that we do to help us ensure success for future projects. So why have lessons learned meetings? The first few bullets there really look at how well you planned and how well you scheduled your project. So it's that discussion about what was successful and maybe what wasn't so successful during your lessons learned meeting. Also, the next couple bullets is about documenting what happened during your project. Talking about what you did, what processes you put in place, documenting those, and then also as a group deciding where those lessons learned and where that documentation is going to live going forward. The last bullet there is my favorite, and that is how to put closure to your project and transition into operational work. That's really critical because if you've worked on a project with the same people for multiple years, it's almost like as a project manager, we become a subject matter expert, and that's not really what our role is. What I like to do at the end of a project is to do a document that really outlines the operational roles and responsibility of the different departments, what work they're going to do going forward, not the project work that we've done, but once we draw that line in the sand, what operational roles and responsibilities people have. And that for me seems to work really well. But you got to make sure you draw that line in the sand again of what a project is and what you're doing operational moving forward. Otherwise, you're going to be doing the work for years and years. Just a few tips for having a successful lessons learned meeting. Now, Ed is going to go over those with the top 10, and I'm going to chime in here and there. But the first item there is to have a plan. You pull out your template, have your questions ready, but this is an important meeting. So when you get in that room, have a plan of what you are going to do and what your plan is to accomplish. You need to invite the right people. That's critical. Again, we're going to go over that about who those right people in the room are and who you want to invite and possibly who you don't want there. Keep good documentation and distribute the documentation. Whatever anyone says in that meeting that you think will be helpful as a lesson learned to keep for future projects, keep that in your lessons learned document and distribute the results right away. Again, that's creating that line of what's a project is and what's operational. Get that documentation of your lessons learned meeting done and get it out to your team. Also, during your lessons learned meetings, it's really nice to celebrate the success of the team, acknowledge those people that did really good work, maybe went above and beyond, and just acknowledge the team as a whole, like, hey, we did it, we're done. I know groups that have done like ice cream parties when we were together, done little activities just to celebrate success, and that goes a long way, particularly if you're going to work with those people again. And then last on that list is just be present, be confident in your role. Sometimes projects don't go the way we always want them to. Maybe you're working with a tough group or tough departments. Be graceful, accept criticism, document it, and move on. So Ed, that gives us the background. Do you want to take over the top 10?
Absolutely. So again, this is the list of top 10 that was collected from our survey results. So we'll start here in no particular order. So this isn't like the Tonight Show, a ranked list. But the first one was ensure you have the right resources involved in the earliest phases of the project, and had a little creative fun picking this picture. You can let your imagination determine how these people are reacting if you come to somebody and want to pull them into a project later or not. So they're either smiling because you finally thought of them, or they're laughing at you while you're standing there and because you forgot to include them. So next one, yeah, the team invited on the lessons learned is critically important for an open, honest, and useful conversation. And then there was a side note submitted with this one, which is just depending on the team, sponsors or key stakeholders may make sense, while others may not. Those initiatives will be key. And as we go through these, we promise to keep these not to associate these with the universities that came from, but if it's something strikes a chord and you want to share a particular more specificity around this lesson, or if you've got something that you identify with, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, we'll keep the slides going. So next one, this one, loved this one. So, and it was actually written this way in the survey response with exclamation points and everything. Communication, communication, communication. Essentially, it is the key deliverable until there's actually a plan in place. So until you have that final deliverable, communication is the deliverable, they go on to say. So you can read more there about what they're saying, but essentially how important communication is. And when you fail to look at that, consider it, that can make or break projects. Next one, the importance of clarifying scope and expected value of the project. So this one has some more detail, and knowing this person was able to tease out some more information here, but the sponsor of one of the projects had significantly different understanding of the outcome of the project. And it was good that they got to common understanding early, and they ended up breaking the project into 2 pieces. So Next one. Early resource estimations, which lead to project start end dates, are rarely accurate. That is so true. And this can often lead to resource contentions with other projects and programs. So that one is teasing out the fact that it's hard to really estimate projects at the early onset, and that often then creates collisions with other projects, programs across the entire portfolio there, leading to things like late starts, longer durations, later end dates, you name it. Moving on. Listen, listen, listen. Don't know if I can say any more here to this one. This was the next one that was shared with us. And then this one was, we didn't do our due diligence in exploring options. So talking with this person, the university system had assumed, so it was this big, large university system, and they'd adopted a product for their smaller campuses. The system had assumed while it would work for the larger, you want to call it home-based campus, if you will, it didn't necessarily meet the needs of the other campuses. And so, and then they imposed a timeline for all campuses that created this sense of false pressure, which was then landed on that one vendor that had to serve all those campuses and get that implementation going. So sounds like a fun one to me. And then the time to make the final decision here was too long. Talk to this person. This one was, there was, and I got to be careful what I say on this one. This one was, there was a major project coming through. Business case was submitted. It took them many months. I'll just say that many months for the executive level to make that final decision on yes, let's go forward. And then when push came to shove, decision was made somewhere around February, and then they had until August to actually get the whole thing implemented. And that business case was submitted way back in August. So that lesson learned was documented in the actual lessons learned meeting, and the person shared with me that the executives were made aware that that was a huge contributor to the almost failure of that project. So it's an interesting one. Moving on. Another one, hold the vendor accountable. So making sure that that vendor is aware of what they're responsible for, and holding them, treating them as a member of the project team to make sure that they can stay on top of their tasks. And then working with the sponsors to adjust unrealistic timelines. So with that list being shared, I've been playing around with ChatGPT a lot, so I wanted to see how much it knew about project management. So I asked it to give me a list of projects that had out of control scope, or like big lessons learned, if you will. And so this is just extra icing on the cake. There's 5 projects there that are referred to and what their issues and challenges were. So you've got the Sydney Opera House, and you can see some of the details about that project, how long it took them to get completed, and the amount of budget overruns they ran into. I won't go into each and every one of these. You see the Boston's Big Dig there, as well as the Big Channel Tunnel. So lots of interesting lessons learned there across all of those projects. Any comments, questions about any of this?
Ed, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What have you done with your lessons learned? Like, we know as PMPs, we do our lessons learned, we do all our documentation. And what do you do with them? Do you share them with others? Do you keep them to yourself? What's been your practice with the universities you've worked in?
Sure. So previous institution, the lessons learned were all bundled up with those project files. And so you put lessons learned in there with the project charter and the and the stakeholder register and all that gets bundled up and then archived in that project folder. I often, looking back on that, wish that we had taken out those lessons learned and stored them centrally in a lessons learned area. Because you think about the purpose of those lessons learned, it's so that people can go back, look at other projects and determine or learn what were some of the snags. And if they have to dive down into project A and then project B and project C and weed all those lessons learned out, not really doing them a whole lot of value, and it's certainly not something they're going to want to do. So in my mind, I often thought, why not just index all the lessons learned together in this big lessons learned repository? It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just have them located together. I haven't yet had to close a project out on at my new institution, so I'll let you know later.
Yeah, good one. Anyone else want to share what they do with your lessons learned? Deborah gave us a thumbs up. Thank you, Deborah.
I have an example of how to keep a vendor accountable.
Great, go ahead.
This happened at the end of October. We were moving over to a financial software system, and our entire vendor project team got laid off. And nobody was responding to emails, and nobody was responding to calls. And so I eventually reached out to the initial salesperson who was still employed with the company and said, hey, you sold us this and we're trying to get this up and running and nobody's responding to me. Can you please have somebody respond to me? And he very graciously found a new project manager, and we were back running on schedule. But that was 3 weeks of no contact from that software vendor.
That's crazy. I know I've been in situations where you get the what is it, the customer or the sales rep that comes in and sells you the moon and the stars, and then you've got someone else that actually does the implementation and like, oh no, we can't do that. You know, that's always scary too. But yeah, the contact is critical for your vendors. Anyone else have a question or comment they'd like to share?
This is Deborah. I wanted to share that it was a couple of things you had in the presentation. So one talked about tapping on those quiet people that sit in the meetings and they have a lot of feedback. And I tend to do that in all of my meetings, right? So we'll try to, and I encourage my team to do that as well, to get them engaged so they can, I always tell them this is a safe space. You know, they say whatever they want to say. Nobody's going to take it personal or anything because it's about making it all better, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is important that you really do take a moment to engage, you know, not embarrass anybody, but sometimes you may just have to kind of pull their name a little bit and kind of go, hey, tell me what you're thinking, or it looks like you're thinking about something. What is something that you, or what has been your experience, you know, with that? So I think that's really important. The other thing was when you talked about the storage of the lessons learned. So we do something very similar as part of our processes here, where we have a project folder and then we have a lessons learned folder inside the structure, right? So in that file folder, the lessons learned is stored there. And the form that we use for lessons learned is really, it serves a couple of purposes. It provides a sign off from our sponsor, because we do all of that at that time. Once we know we've met the deliverables, so it provides a sign off for the sponsor. It also shows the operational activities that's getting ready to pick up now at this point, the new person that does it. And of course, it lists all the lessons learned. And so the sponsor and anybody that has any engagement in with the project is all invited to the lessons learned so they can give their feedback. And then is one of the things that we have as part of our process. If there's a similar project or something similar that's getting ready to start, we'll say, hey, you need to check that particular lessons learned, bring it to the kickoff meeting and say, hey, when we did this before, this was some lessons learned that we had. So some things we may need to consider, and maybe this time in this project, we won't have to, you know, we can do it better. So those were just a couple of things I pointed out, but those were great. I always appreciate hearing about lessons learned. Thank you.
Well, congrats for using your lessons learned. A lot of us just put them in a vault. You know, they're done, move on, next one.
Right,
So
right.
that's great. I'm glad you're using them. And then also your comment on, you know, pulling people out in the group, you know, having someone share their opinion or their knowledge. Sometimes that's hard. I think as project managers, you know, we're all talkers. You know, we could talk about our shoes for 30 minutes, you know, and let everyone just else sit there and be our audience. But it's so important to get others to speak up at a meeting. And sometimes I love what you said, you know, it's you look like you want to say something, you know, even if they don't. It's just like drawing them out and giving them a safe space to talk. Great advice. Anyone else have anything to share?
Christina has her hand up.
Hi, yeah. So I wanted to piggyback on a few of those comments. One thing that I've been reading a lot lately about having like retrospectives and things like that. So one of the tips that I took was to get everybody, no matter what, engaged early and to have them say something early so that if they say something early in the meeting, they're more likely to participate and communicate throughout the meeting. So I used that tactic recently and it helped a lot. And I held a retrospective with another project manager on a closeout of a project that we had done. So to capture all of the lessons learned. And it went really well. And our team had never done anything like that before. So we built out all these activities and we had the whole event. And then I surveyed people. I gave a survey beforehand so that people could come with things in mind. And then we surveyed people at the end on how the retrospective went and the different activities through the event. So to see what worked well for them and what may not have and how to improve it. So I took all of those things, put them into a lessons learned for the retrospective, and am going to continue to do that to see what activities have helped our team to figure out, you know, problems and things like that. So that's something that I've started keeping for myself as I continue to facilitate these events, and that's worked well.
That's great information. Good for you. And then Ed, I saw you had something in the chat.
Looks like Joel posted something in the chat, just sharing what he does with lessons learned. So can read that out loud. They share lessons learned with the sponsors part of our project closeout activities. Okay, and then this helps them have knowledge so that they can support future efforts. The thing I liked was then once a month, we have any PM that had a project close, share those at their PMO meeting so other PMs can learn. And then they centrally store them in a common repository. So cool.
Nice. You know, Ed, I wanted to touch on one thing that you and I had talked about, and that is the people at the lessons learned meeting. And we had some discussion with a few people about, you know, possibly not having the sponsor there, you know, or certain people there so others could speak freely, maybe if things didn't go so well.
So I've done a lessons learned. It was a major ID badge project, which would, I'm going in the background of the project just so you get a feel for it. It impacted dining, res halls, and it was their ID, of course. And there were a lot of things that needed to be connected, and we learned a lot of lessons. And so sometimes there was gnashing of teeth, and I would be lying if I said there weren't finger pointing amongst the project members that had to get sorted out. I went ahead and called a lessons learned meeting at the end of that with the sponsor there. And it was just really cool. He was very appreciative of that whole process and actually helped me facilitate a good lessons learned meeting. And he even contributed to, which I really loved about it, he even contributed, this is a mistake I made as the sponsor. And so once he did that, then everyone else joined in. So that's going to be hit and miss, I think. You have to use your best judgment. Do you bring your sponsor or do you not? I tend to lean toward bringing them in. All people involved in the project, get them in there, get them talking.
We engage our sponsors on all of ours. Yeah, we do.
Great.
And sometimes I'm the bad person, right? If I know it's an elephant in the room and nobody wants to say it, I'll say, well, it's my understanding. I think we may have had an experience where we had X to happen. Then that kind of, sometimes the sponsor go, oh, really? I didn't know that. Or did somebody? So it kind of feeds into the conversation. So, I don't mind being the bad guy to bring it up, it's just one of those, as it would be. I'm sorry, Carol, I think I missed your voice and I may have cut you off.
No, absolutely. And we're here all to share. It's our time for Q&A. Let's see, in Joel, I don't have my chat up, Ed.
Yeah, I'll pull it up, Carol.
Okay.
I've done this too. He likes to capture lessons learned throughout the project, since sometimes he can selectively remember / forget things. And
I was just going to ask that
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
I had started doing that with a multi-year program that I was managing years ago. And the idea that as soon as we discovered something, we'd hurry up and note that somewhere so that we could actually collect things in a timely fashion rather than going back afterward. And I'd be curious to see how many other folks actually do that, even with projects that are only planned to be like 6 to 12 months. Like, it feels like, and maybe that's just because I don't want out of sight, out of mind. It kind of drops off into the ethers if
Into
it's
the
too
ether.
long. How many other people do that? And have you found that it's been valuable, because it kind of jogs your memory when you do get to the end and you're doing that closure report, and you can go through and remind people, okay, we did these things and we resolved them. Maybe it even gets the conversations going for some of those quieter folks. They're like, oh yeah, we did have that. And they can talk and collaborate on something together versus being left on the spot to try and remember and go through some of those items ad hoc.
Yeah, Joel's comments got me thinking. I just had a operational meeting with a VP of enrollment management, and without getting into the details, it was all good stuff, but she made a comment and said, I really wish we had done this instead of that. As soon as this community meeting is over, I'm going to turn right around and add that to the lessons learned section of our closure document, just so that we have that.
Yeah.
Well, PMI does suggest we have a lessons learned register.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we all, live and die by the PMBOK, but there is some good information in there. And because we were doing this, I did go back and read. But yeah, that it just kind of like jogs your memory, like, oh yeah, I should do that. Or just even like having a risk register and adding it to a risk register, or risks, issues, and decisions, just some way to log it, because we can't remember everything.
Oh, I love Mary's comment on that. It's a living document, which, like you just said, Carol, like our risk and our issue stuff, like just
So write it
that's part of
down.
what we're doing. Yep, write it down, keep it front and center.
Anything else anyone has a question about, comment, suggestion? If not, Jen, I think we're gonna go ahead and close it up. Ed, anything else from you?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Appreciate all the participation and the idea sharing around the community group. And awesome.
And thank you for responding to the survey. We do
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
And an extra plug, especially for the things like the Agile Moment, it doesn't have to be the steering committee. So just planting that seed right now. If you've got an Agile idea and you want to come forward and share it, just ping the community group and we can add you to the next.
I didn't even intend for you to
opening.
become a promotioner from that. That I think just putting you on the spot with your professional development, now you're going to be trying to get people in there to do more.
Yeah, because then I want to turn around and put them on the spot. No, just kidding. I would never do that.
Yeah. Marketing is a second job.
Right.
So Jen, there we go.
Yep. Just a quick reminder, hashtags. I know it's a hard thing to remember, and when you're putting in job descriptions and openings and all that fun, it's the last thing that we're thinking about. We're like, hey, I just want to hurry up and get it out there. Once in a while, I go through and I try to clean them up and edit and add those after the fact, but it is kind of an easy way for people to quickly filter on topics. So if you can remember, the ones that are listed here are our most common ones. If you didn't remember to do it when you had it going in the first time, maybe you can go back afterward and add it in afterward, but it is helpful, gets people using things. But if you come up with some really great ones besides these that you think are helpful or useful for us to use, please feel free to let me know. I would love to put those on the list and we can share that with the rest of the community. All right. Ooh, I think I went too far. So you're going to notice our schedule right now is pretty bare, if you will. We've got a few topics that we've been talking about in the steering committee to try and queue up. Another one revisiting the conversation of that intersection of service management and project management. I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to try and squeeze into May or June, or if we're going to try and do something in August. But the reason we're re-injecting that is because through collaboration with the ITSM group, we're also doing an entire series or planning to do an entire series where we will be talking about that intersection again. And like Carol had mentioned, that handoff of, you've become the project manager, has become the expert, the service, your product inside out. There has to be a transition. And how can we do those things effectively and making sure that there's minimal interruption to the day-to-day? So we're going to go through that again. We're going to try and propose a couple of sessions for Educause conference this year as well. Stay tuned, because if all goes well and those all get approved, then we'll see both meetings happening as well as some sessions around that topic at Educause this fall. But sometime in the next month here, hopefully we get a little bit more solidified content on our schedule so that we can let you know in advance. Here's some time frames that you want to try and block up on your calendar. Bear with us, we're getting a couple of changes here. We've got a key member of our group who hasn't been available for a while, so it's been a little bit of a transition right now. Always, if you have topics that you really are just dying to hear about, please do feel free to contact one of us and let us know. We may not be the people to do it right away, but we can certainly network and connect with folks that we know and try to make sure that something is presented on those topics. So next meeting, going to be Wednesday, April 19th. And as always, all of that information is on Connect, and you can see the links to the meeting registration as well. So you can get the links ahead of time, put it on your calendar and be ready to go. And then this is also Educause Connect, is where Ed will be putting our video recording of this session as well as the presentation deck. And then YouTube, and maybe you'll go to social media as well, Ed, and get out there and talk about how awesome Ed's professional development path is. No. They left me to talk, and I should never do that ever again. I just am there's no seriousness here. All right, everyone. As always, thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Ed. It's amazing. And if anybody has any questions after the session, please do reach out, let us know, get the conversations going on that Connect platform.